plays a critical role in healing our body. The interaction of our thoughts with the physical material world is of huge interest today, garnering increasing attention by academics around the world. Despite a wealth of scientific data showing that one can influence the other, and even more evidence proving that certain emotional states can lead to chronic illness, many who work in mainstream medicine remain entirely ignorant of these concepts. Perhaps this is why more and more people are gravitating towards alternative forms of medicine. As Garth Cook from Scientific American points out, a growing body of scientific research suggests that our mind can play an important role in healing our body, or in staying healthy in the first place. There are now several lines of research suggesting that our mental perception of the world constantly informs and guides our immune system in a way that makes us better able to respond to future threats. That was a sort of aha moment for me, where the idea of an entwined mind and body suddenly made more scientific sense than an ephemeral consciousness that's somehow separated from our physical selves. The research and placebo, when it comes to learning about the mind-body connection and its relationship to our health, it can be difficult to choose a starting place amongst the vast and growing body of research. One of the best places to start, however, is the placebo effect, which demonstrates that the mind can create physiological changes in the body. Neuroscientist Fabio Bettetti explains, there isn't just one placebo effect, but many. Placebo painkillers can trigger the release of natural pain-relieving chemicals called endorphins. Patients with Parkinson's disease respond to placebo with a flood of dopamine. Fake oxygen given to someone at altitude has been shown to cut levels of neurotransmitters called prostaglandins, which dilate blood vessels, among other things, and are responsible for many of the symptoms of altitude sickness. The placebo effect is so wondrous because it unlocks the power of the mind. The biological changes observed in the body after administering a placebo are not triggered by the placebo itself, but rather by our mind, by our perception, by the psychological response to these fake treatments. Despite intriguing results, research into the placebo effect has been limited. So far, only a few model systems have been investigated, like pain, depression, and Parkinson's, but there is much more to be learned. One thing, however, does remain clear, and that is that we can change our biology simply by changing what we believe to be true. In his book, The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton, PhD, persuasively argues for further research into this untapped resource within ourselves. Quote, the placebo effect should be the subject of major funding research efforts if medical researchers could figure out how to leverage the placebo effect. They would hand doctors an efficient, energy-based, side effect-free tool to treat disease. Energy healers say they already have such tools, but I am a scientist and I believe the more we know about science of the placebo, the better we'll be able to use it in a clinical testing, end quote. Let's take a look at a few more interesting studies that warrant further investigation into the matter. One great one is a Bayer School of Medicine study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2002. It looked at surgery for patients with severe and debilitating knee pain. Many surgeons know there is no placebo effect in surgery, or so most of them believe. The patients were divided into 3 groups. The surgeons shaved the damaged cartilage in the knee of one group. For the second group, they flushed out the knee joint, removing all of the material believed to be causing inflammation. Both of these processes are the standard surgeries for people who have severely arthritic knees. The third group received a fake surgery. The patients were only sedated and tricked into believing that they had the knee surgery. Doctors simply made the incisions and splashed salt water on the knee as they would in normal surgery. They then sewed up the incisions like the real thing, and the process was complete. All 3 groups went through the same rehab process with astonishing results. The placebo group improved just as much as the other two groups who had surgery. Dr. Mosley, the surgeon involved in the study, made a bold comment, emphasizing that his, quote, skill as a surgeon had no benefit on these patients, end quote, and that the entire benefit of surgery for osteoarthritis of the knee was the placebo effect. Another very interesting example of a placebo technique used in medicine comes from researchers in Seattle who have developed a virtual reality landscape known as Snow World. In the game, the participant flies around inside an ice canyon, shooting snowballs at other characters, theoretically distracting them from the pain of their physical body. Gareth Cook from Scientific American reports on this experiment trying the game, end quote. Quote, it's meant to work as a painkiller. The idea is that the brain has a limited capacity for attention. So for the ice canyon commands that attention. If the ice canyon commands it, there is less capacity left over for experiencing the pain. When I tried Snow World, the researchers used a heated box to simulate a burn to my foot. It was quite painful outside the game, but once immersed, I had so much fun I barely noticed it, end quote. The technique was utilized to help burn victims deal with their sensation of wound treatment and physiotherapy, which can be extremely painful. In trials, researchers discovered that undergoing these therapy sessions while immersed in Snow World lessened patients' pain by 15 to 40%. This, among other research, tells us that the brain plays an enormous role in the level of pain we feel. Cook explains, so I think we've got our approach to pain all wrong. Our focus is almost exclusively on trying to banish it with drugs, which is increasingly costly and caused huge problems with side effects and addiction. Research like Snow World shows the potential of psychological approaches for treating pain, both to maximize the effectiveness of drugs and perhaps in some cases to replace them. Another great example of the power of the placebo effect was demonstrated in a 1999 report by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. The report discovered that half of the severely depressed patients taking drugs improved compared to the 32% taking a placebo. Considering all the dangers and side effects associated with antidepressants, not to mention how much pharmaceutical companies profit from their sale, this statistic seems an important one. If we can accomplish nearly as much with our minds alone, without harming our health or creating chemical dependencies, shouldn't we be exploring that avenue first? Yet in a study published in the British Medical Journal by researchers at the Nordic Cochrane Center in Copenhagen, it was revealed that pharmaceutical companies were not disclosing all information regarding the results of their drug trials. Researchers looked at documents from 70 different double-blind, placebo-controlled trials of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRI, and serotonin and non-norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, SNRI, and found that the full extent of serious harm in clinical study reports went unreported. These are the reports sent to major health authorities like the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and you can read more about that in the link here. A 2002 article published in the American Physiological Association's Prevention and Treatment by University of Connecticut psychology professor Irvin Kirsch, titled "The Emperor's New Drugs," made more shocking discoveries. He found that 80% of the effect of antidepressants, as measured in clinical trials, could be attributed to the placebo effect. This professor even had to file a Freedom of Information Act request to get information on the clinical trials of the top antidepressants. The difference between the response of the drugs and the response to the placebo was less than 2 points on average on this clinical scale that goes from 50 to 60 points. That's a very small difference, and that difference is clinically meaningless, he says. And the placebo effect is not just limited to depression. One trial found that patients with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, had much greater relief from their symptoms if the practitioner was warm and empathetic rather than cold but polite. Another found that patients with acid reflux disease did dramatically better after an extended consultation with the physician compared to the usual quick go-round. From back pain to childbirth and more, many patients' outcomes depend on what drugs are prescribed, not on just what drugs are prescribed, but on how care is delivered. There are many studies indicating that the mind plays a role in both cancer growth and recovery. In animal studies, for example, stress hormones make a range of cancers spread faster, and patient trials suggest that stress management intervention reduces inflammation. The list goes on and on. Researchers all over the world have found that placebo treatments can stimulate real biological and physiological responses, everything from changes in heart rate to blood pressure and even chemical activity in the brain. It has been effective with a number of different ailments, from arthritis and Parkinson's to depression, fatigue, anxiety, and more. And beyond placebo, the placebo effect is most commonly cited during discussions of power of the mind-body connection, but there is a wealth of other data that also strengthens the argument. For example, studies have been conducted which investigate the influence of A's intention on B's physiological state, a process referred to as a remote intention. They further examined the influence of A's attention on B's physiological state, while A gazes at B over a one-way video link called remote staring. Last but not least, they studied the influence of A's intention on B's attention or behavior, which is referred to as remote helping. The effects of distant mental interactions are measured using electrodermal activity, heart rate, blood volume, pulse, and electrocortical activity, EEG, electrodermal activity, heart rate, blood volume, pulse, blood-brain oxygenation, MRI, and electrogastrogram, EEG. These studies have yielded remarkable results which have since been successfully repeated in laboratories around the world. They actually hint at the possibility that another person's mental attention could possibly have some sort of physiological effect on someone else's. And for more information, you can read the publication titled Distant Healing Intention Therapies, an overview of the scientific evidence. If our thoughts and intentions can actually affect physical systems, just imagine what our own thoughts and intentions could do to us. If we look at it from the quantum mechanical perspective, factors associated with consciousness, measurement, observation, attention have indeed influenced physical systems, which is why all of the pioneering and prominent figures in this field regarded consciousness fundamental, where matter is seen as a derivation from consciousness. Then we have studies published in peer-reviewed journals making even more astonishing claims. The study published in the American Journal of Chinese Medicine, as seen as in the U.S. National Library of Medicine, for example, demonstrated that a woman with special abilities was and is able to accelerate the germination of specific seeds for the purposes of developing a more robust seed stock. Chuling Sun is a woman with exceptional powers. A member of the Chinese Somatic Science Research Institute, she is a practitioner of Wai Qi. Wai Qi is a type of Qigong that teaches the practitioner to bring the Qi energy of traditional Chinese medicine under control of the mind. Chuling Sun can induce plant seeds to grow shoots and roots several centimeters long within 20 minutes using mentally projected Qi energy. And this has been demonstrated on more than 180 different occasions at universities, as well as science and research institutions in China, including Taiwan and Hong Kong, as well as other countries, for example, Japan, Thailand, Malaysia, etc. We took part in and repeated the Qi germination experiment several times, and 5 of them succeeded. This remarkable effect on seed development has drawn widespread attention, but the biological mechanisms that underlie this phenomenon are unknown. The examples are endless. making clear that the mind-body connection definitely warrants more attention when it comes to mainstream medicine and therapeutic interventions. Mind-matter interaction and healing. Nikola Tesla once said that, quote, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all previous centuries of its existence," end quote. In fact, Vedic philosophy heavily influenced Nikola Tesla's ideas about free energy, and you can read about that in the link here. Fast forward to today, and we now know hundreds, if not thousands, of internationally recognized scientists from around the world coming together to stress the fact that matter, that is protons, electrons, photons, anything that has a mass, is not the only reality. If we wish to understand the true nature of our reality, we must stop limiting ourselves to only examining physical systems. We must consider the role of non-physical systems, such as factors associated with consciousness and their interaction with physical systems, matter. Today, this type of science is known as post-materialist science. If Nikola Tesla was around, there would be no doubt that he would be leading the charge in this important field. To summarize the current contrast between material science and post-material science is to look at the points made in a document that was co-authored by R. Gary Schwartz, professor of psychology, medicine, neurology, psychiatry, and surgeon at the University of Arizona, Mario Beauregard, PhD, from the University of Arizona, and Lisa Miller, PhD, from Columbia University. It was presented as an international summit on post-materialist science, spirituality, and society. They and hundreds of other scientists have come to several conclusions which you can view in their Manifesto for Post-Material Science. Below is an intriguing video, Institute of Noetic Sciences with regards to mind-matter interaction, which is the topic of this article because psychic healing deals with mind interaction with human biology. Now, when it comes to mind-matter interaction, which is part of the non-material science, measurements can and have been made in both blind and double-blind peer-reviewed literature. To learn more about that, you can examine the concepts. Feel free to browse through selected lists of downloadable peer-reviewed journals, articles reporting studies of psychic phenomena, mostly published in the 21st century. I also wanted to provide a brief background with regards to this topic because it's often ridiculed with the mainstream, despite the fact that we have some of the most brilliant scientists in the world attesting to the credibility. One of them is Elizabeth Roscher. She's a nuclear physicist who is former researcher in the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and the Stanford Research Institute, as well as NASA. The interviewer is Jeffrey Mishlove, founder of Thinking Aloud, where he interviews a number of fascinating guests on various interesting topics. And they're in the links below in the videos you can see. This was originally created for Collective Evolution and is published here under Creative Commons. How our mind plays a critical role in healing our body, and it's on Collective Spark by Steve McCandley. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.